Alrighty, Internet. On this evening's installment of Dogg for Mayor, we're going to be looking at the dreaded SPARS document, which so many people have sent to me or shared on my social media thingies, which is just Facebook, I'll be honest. But so everyone's saying that this is the blueprint for COVID-19 and all that. I think Alex Jones talked about it. Jay Dyer talked about it. I haven't seen any other commentary or read any other commentary on this document, so I figured I'd just go to the source, and that's what I'm going to do. So let's get to it. The SPARS Pandemic 2025 to 2028, a futuristic scenario for public health risk communicators. So I want to emphasize right off the bat, this is not about the disease itself, which in this case they're calling SPARS. It's about managing public perception of the disease. That's what this whole 89-page document is about. And we're not going to read the whole thing. We're really just going to skim it. It's not really worth reading, but I think it's going to be a good video for people to watch in lieu of reading the whole thing, because I can add a little bit to the discussion, I think. And so what it is it's, these people are spin doctors, publicists, public relations experts. This is propaganda, pure and simple, if you can call it that. And I'm focusing on the health aspect. Okay, so I'm looking at the effect of the disease, and that's primarily what my analysis is going to focus on for this video. Differences between this scenario, the SPARS scenario, and what's actually going on today in 2021 with what they're now calling COVID-19. So, first of all, I am not a doctor, as usual, but I'll go into so it's Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. None of these people are either, and that's pretty interesting. So we got some PhDs and MPHs. MPH is a master in public health. So you can be an epidemiologist or a hospital administrator with this degree, which I found super interesting because I thought a little bit about becoming an epidemiologist, so I wanted to know what went into that, and that's what goes into it. It's this MPH. So if you want to, epidemiologist is not a doctor. They're not concerned with the effects of diseases on the human body or any other body. They're just concerned with allocation of resources to combat those diseases. So that is a really interesting example of siloing or compartmentalization that's going on in the healthcare industry today, where we do not have doctors actually dealing with the rollout of disease countermeasures, or medical countermeasures, as they're going to call it in this document. I went through and looked at what all these people do, and I can't really tell you, but basically either they're anthropologists. Okay, and I want you to, if you have never before, just look up the term weaponized anthropology, and look up a group called the Network of Concerned Anthropologists. So anthropologists study man. Anthropos is man, and logos is the study of. And so they're looking at how people interact and basically how they're going to react to this kind of a pandemic scenario, and the government's handling or mishandling thereof. All right. Yeah, so as I said, I went through and looked these guys up. I'll leave that to some other intrepid researcher to really, drill into that. And I'll put the link in the description to the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. And so, interestingly, with this, not only are none of the project team people here doctors, right? PhD, 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 Master of Public Health, and Master of Public Health candidate. So just an undergraduate there. But in the Center for Health Security, they don't have a lot of doctors here. I think there's 10 people, and 2 of them are MDs. So we're not talking about medicine, okay? We're not, yeah, that needs to be really underlined when we're looking at this stuff. Alrighty, so moving on, my first note starts at page 6. So I'm just going to skip all this, like I said. Table of contents, blah, blah, blah. Acknowledgements. All right, well, first, I'll mention this. This is a hypothetical scenario, all right? This is what the debunkers are saying. This isn't real, guys. This isn't the plan, right? Entirely fictional. Anyway, preface. The problem that this whole article, this whole scenario is talking about is right here, the echo chamber. Basically, what they're saying is people are going to get, you know, with their social media, they only listen to people they want to listen to. They only listen to friends that have their same point of view, and so that this becomes a real problem when the government doesn't tell them what they want to hear. They're going to tune out, and that's basically what this whole document goes into, is how to address these people who have tuned out. Oh no! All right, page 1. We're skipping all of this, right? All right, chapter 1, SPARS, because it's St. Paul acute respiratory syndrome. Blah, blah, blah. Here's their fake CDC Twitters. All right, and then page 6, I'm going to start with, where is it? Mild cases of the disease, which produce symptoms including cough, fever, headaches, and malaise, were often perceived as the flu by the people who had them, and consequently often went untreated and undiagnosed by medical personnel. As a result, early case fatality estimates were inflated. By late November, that CDC reported an initial estimated SPARS case fatality rate of 4.7%. By contrast, the World Health Organization reported that the overall case fatality rate for SARS was 14 to 15% and over 50% for people over the age of 64. Later in the SPARS outbreak, data that included more accurate estimates of mild SPARS cases indicated a case fatality rate of only 0.6%. So compare that with COVID-19, that's basically what we saw, except for the mild cases of the disease at the beginning, right? At the very beginning, we were just hit by Chinese people falling dead in the streets. Okay, so that's quite a bit different. But anyway, going on. So because of asymptomatic spread, thus infected persons could spread the virus for up to nearly a week before showing symptoms of the disease themselves. So what I want to say here is, look, before showing symptoms, they're not talking about asymptomatic spread in this scenario because asymptomatic spread does not exist. It doesn't have a Wikipedia article. There's no concept of asymptomatic spread in the literature. This is just completely bananas garbage that they've invented for the COVID-19 scenario. And then this is different. Second, morbidity and mortality from SPARS were both significantly higher in children than adults, and then pregnant women and those with chronic respiratory conditions. So this is totally different from COVID-19. This is totally different from anything except basically the Spanish flu. So when I get into this, it's really looking to me like these people aren't really aware of some basic facts about disease presentation, which is, I think, the kind of that's the big thing for me reading this whole document, is I don't really think these guys know what they're talking about from a medical perspective, because they're not doctors, and I'm not a doctor, but I'm not making documents like this. So yes, so that is, then they do this. They do a little, what do we learn? Go home and talk about this amongst your friends. All right, chapter 2, possible cure. And that's so different. We don't have any kind of a cure with COVID-19, right? Ever, except until we get to the vaccine, but that's not what they're going to talk about here. Page 8. Early in the SPARS pandemic, public health and medical professionals were hopeful that the outbreak could be contained through case identification and isolation. Again, totally different from COVID-19, where we were told that it's just going to pass through the whole population. It is so infectious, it's going to kill a few people, and we're just 15 days to slow the spread or whatever, just so we don't overwhelm hospital staff. And then all right, so at the beginning, no treatment or vaccine for SPARS was approved for use in humans. The antiviral calosivir, which was initially developed as a therapeutic for severe acute respiratory syndrome and Middle East respiratory syndrome, was one of several antiviral drugs authorized in the United States by the FDA to treat a handful of severe SPARS cases under its expanded access protocol. Calosivir had shown some evidence of efficacy against other coronaviruses, and a small inventory of the drug was already a part of the strategic national stockpile in anticipation of FDA approval, despite some concerns about potential adverse side effects. So this is a made-up drug. They made up for this scenario, calosivir, and they're going to refer to it later. And what they're saying is that it was developed out of the SARS and the MERS epidemics. And so here's the thing: is there was no such drug invented to deal with these two coronaviruses. And I talked about this before. It's basically because they appeared and disappeared so fast, and they mutated supposedly so fast that there was just no way to react to them. And that's why there's no vaccine for them either. So anyway, that they had to cook this up for this scenario, so just, but that's very strange. And then there's the potential vaccine, right? And so in this scenario, this made-up world of 2025, December 30th, 2025, I should say that they're saying that the pandemic starts in, well, right around this time. I can't remember when they said, like October 2025. You can go back and read for yourself if you want to. Yeah, so anyway, but in their world, some company in Asia came up with a vaccine for hoofed mammals. And hoofed mammals, meaning cows and pigs, they say somewhere. So I'll just read. Here it is. In 2021, a coronavirus caused an outbreak in Region 7, Southeast Asia, hoofed mammal populations. Our researchers developed and produced in-house an effective vaccine against the infection, which they called HMRV Vac14. Its subsequent approval and use successfully ended the outbreak in the region. So, yeah, no. There has never been a case in history of a vaccine ending an outbreak for obvious reasons. It takes years and years and years to develop vaccines, and outbreaks do not last years and years and years because everyone would be dead, okay? So this is basic, out of touch with the way the diseases actually work thinking coming from Johns Hopkins. So yeah, cows and pigs. And this is strange because cows are not an animal that shares a lot of diseases with humans. Pigs definitely are, but we have the avian flu and the swine flu. Cows are where we got the original smallpox vaccine. But beyond that, there's not a whole lot of diseases that we share with them, according to the germ theory. Just another little point that discredits the writers of this scenario, in my opinion. Alrighty, so Chapter 4, and this part I'm just going to skim through these really. Chapter 4 deals with conflicting information between federal agencies, right? This is what they're worried about. Okay, so one news outlet gets their talking points from the FDA. Another gets their talking points from the CDC, and that leads people to not trust them. And I just think that is so naive because obviously the news is all on the same level in terms of this stuff. We are just getting a concerted, barrage of disinformation from social media and mainstream media and the controlled alternative media. They're all saying the same thing, and they're not getting it from the FDA. They're probably getting it from the CIA and probably other countries' intelligence agencies, not just the United States. Okay. But in this chapter, they're not even going to talk about what really happened in COVID-19, which was the discrepancy between the federal government and the state governments, and the media, right? So, Orange Man Trump did not declare a full fascism, and the Democrats were very grumpy at him for not doing that and giving the power to delegating power to the individual states. Okay, that's what happened, and we saw a big discrepancy in outcome between the states, but not what you'd think. Not where states that were more lenient had higher cases. Nothing like that. But we won't get into that right now. So just naive, and when we're talking about the symptoms from the drug here, okay, calosivir. At this point in the scenario, we're putting the calosivir out there and trying to get people to take it, and we're trying to manage the blowback from the fact that this causes symptoms, okay? And I can't find it right now, but the symptoms, this is just cute. The symptoms that they're worried about are intense stomach cramps, okay? So they had to think of a really mild symptom they could get for this scenario. And just makes me think, what were the symptoms for hydroxychloroquine that they were saying? I don't remember. I wasn't paying attention to that at that point. But I don't think there's really many symptoms to worry about. I thought it was about, lupus patients would not have their access to that drug if everyone else took it. So, yeah. Then we go into chapter 5. Just skim through all that, just talking. And this is where people start to make tweets about their child taking the calosivir, and it's only one child puking, but it goes viral. Oh my goodness! And well, I lost my thing. Sorry. That's all this is. These chapters. So they're talking about calosivir mainly for this part for like several chapters, and that's just interesting to me because I thought it was going to be all about vaccines, and they're really talking about this calosivir, and it's just pretty. Out of it's not what happened with COVID-19. So what can I say about that? But yeah, so because nothing, COVID-19, nothing worked. Okay, we never found, of course, except for except for hydroxychloroquine, but nothing worked. And in this scenario, they're saying, oh, actually, we have something that did work right away, but then it didn't work as good, and it caused side effects. But we still want people to take it. And how do we do that? And so people go. People go on this. This is a made-up social media platform called ZapQ for this scenario, and it sounds kind of like Telegram. They're saying that people can form private groups, and that's problematic because that's how they do the what are they called? The echo chambers, right? You can form a private group, and people can't spy on you. That's another problem. They can't tell what you're talking about, and they can't get their government, messages of peace and goodwill into your private Telegram group. But then this is weird, okay? And this is, so they're talking about this is a made-up technology that they're saying is going to exist in 2025, and so probably, this probably will exist. But look, so they're saying they're going to have flexible screens that are called IAT, Internet Accessing Technology, that people can put on their backs of their jackets and their backpacks, right? I'm just picturing the like punk rock butt flaps, and they're just if you can picture those, and they just show that vomiting video on loop, right? So this is really a contradictory thing for me in the scenario because they're saying, first of all, that people go into their echo chamber groups, but then they're saying that they're going to be out in the world unless everything's on lockdown, which this scenario mention at all the lockdown. But they're going to go out into the world and they're just going to see these freaking YouTube videos on jackets and backpacks. So how do you reconcile those two facts of the scenario? And yes, chapter 6. Chapter 6. So what happened here is, oh no, Europe develops a different drug, and they say ours is better, and that undermines the faith in the FDA, etc. And where is this little? Okay, this is one of the questions. Listen to this. What responsibility, if any, does the FDA have to advise Americans to avoid using VMAX, the European drug? How can the FDA and other public health entities best support the public when making informed MCM choices to protect their health? And my first thought is thalidomide. Thalidomide was a drug that caused terrible birth defects, and it was approved in Germany and England, but the FDA actually did something good and denied approval for the United States and saved a lot of babies from being horribly deformed. So yeah, what responsibility do they have? Maybe is a more open-ended question than I'm giving it credit for, but it seems pretty ludicrous. Well, what responsibility, if any? Come on. All right. Chapter 7. By May 2026, public interest in SPARS had begun to wane. Do tell. How does public interest in a pandemic wane? This is insane. Okay, but we're seeing this with COVID-19. We've seen this probably from starting back in May as well, right after the initial spike. But a lot of people are freaking out, and it's just a matter of keeping the freak going, keeping the fear going. But a lot of people are ready to open up, and that's just bad, right? But this is just bonkers. At this point in the scenario, I'm pretty much tuned out of it. You know, this is ridiculous. Public interest in SPARS has begun to wane, and so they get celebrities, and this just gets even more ridiculous. Okay, so this is BZ, their made-up hip hop artist. Okay, and this is what he says. He compares black people, because they're having trouble in this scenario, to get black people to take the vaccine that is in development by this time, Coravax, and he compares them to people in the Tuskegee Syphilis Institute experiment, and then it causes a backlash because it was insensitive. But wait, he's a black man, so they're saying this black man was so ignorant that he didn't know what the Tuskegee Syphilis experiment implied. Okay, so he has to come on and apologize. Okay, he was proud of how they remained strong in the face of adversity, and he's saddened by the injustice and suffering they experienced, but I still strongly support the CDC's and FDA's recommendations. Right. And then this is their conservative guy. This is pretty funny. Jebediah Johnson is their Twitter, their counterpart to BZ. All right, and they're just saying that what they're saying here is that the conservatives, anytime, because it's a fake Democrat President Bennett, I guess, there's a fake Democrat president, that anytime they slip up, the evil conservatives get in there and just use it as a talking point for their evil conservative messages, of course. So next, chapter 8, we've got this scenario, which is talking about another social media network called Unequal. Okay, and the whole point of Unequal here in this is, it's, as far as I can tell, it's like a woke Reddit. So it's like college students, and they can just go on and there's forums, kind of, and things like that. But isn't it strange that there is no social network for woke people? When people want to like network on the internet, it's always on the conservative side or the conspiracy theorist side. So why don't people want to get together and talk about their wokeness, if they're woke. I guess there's Tumblr. That's all I know of. But besides that, just an interesting point I wanted to make there. And then chapter 9, this is when the chickens come home to roost, and they find out that a randomized, controlled trial of the much vaunted Colosivir indicates that it's less effective than initially thought and is in fact on par with their other two made-up drugs, which both showed low efficacy as SPARS treatments. So after all this hullabaloo, their lovely cure doesn't do anything, and they just say, what do? And that is going to be where I'm going to end this installment. I'm going to break this up into 2 videos, so I'll come back to you with that in just a moment. This has been Dogg for Mayor. I am Evan-Benton, and please like this video, share, and subscribe to my channel. Leave some comments below if you have any questions for me, and I'll be right back.